gives me great pleasure to introduce His Excellency, the Danish Ambassador, Lars Tusen. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Danish Embassy. On behalf of Denmark, and considering the long-standing close relationship between our two countries, and not the least our shared commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I'm very pleased to welcome so many stakeholders in the fight against food waste. Today we'll discuss how to deliver on Sustainable Development Goal 12.3. It's a cause that resonates with us Danes for many reasons. One of them being that the food industry in Denmark is sizable. We have a responsibility and an interest. Therefore, the Danish government puts food waste on top of the agenda, and the Danes have truly embraced it. We have new apps, we have food waste kitchens and supermarkets, and altogether it have made the Danes, the Europeans, frontrunners in the fight against food waste. The Sustainable Development Goals are very much guiding the public debate on a sustainable future, as well as policy development in Denmark. It has resulted in Denmark ranking #1 globally in sustainable development, at least according to the Sustainable Development Report for 2019. Of this, we are of course proud, but we also recognize that we still need to improve. Moreover, there's only so much you can do on your own, especially if you, like Denmark, are just 6 million people. And that's why I'm very pleased that we today can push this agenda further by engaging businesses as well as local government. Business operators, cities, municipalities can make the changes that we need, and it is a big change. If food waste was a country, it would be the world's 3rd largest emitter of greenhouse gases, responsible for 8% of the total emissions. So clearly, everybody has to chip in. It's the ambition of my ministry, the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to be among the 5 most sustainable foreign services in the world within the next 5 years. The good news in all this, aside from making the world a cleaner and better place, is that it's good business to change. Business and consumer can save or make a penny or two, and in my humble experience, Brits and Danes both will appreciate that. Finally, maybe the most important contributing factor in making the fight against food waste a Danish cause is Selina Juul. In 2008, she founded the Stop Wasting Food movement in Denmark, which instantly inspired and motivated not only the Danes. Selina has reached out on a global scale and become a household name. Among her many awards and distinctions, she was named European of the Year for 2020 by Reader's Digest for her effort to raise awareness about this important cause. I'm very pleased that she'll share her vast experiences with us later today. Presently, COVID-19 is top of mind for every decision maker and every household. It's my hope that today's event will contribute to a speedy, sustainable recovery of our societies and our economies. Living up to the SDG responsibility and commitments will be part of the solution. On that note, warm thank you to our partners, London's Waste and Recycling Board, as well as Winnow, that has been instrumental in putting the day's program together, which I'm sure will leave us all inspired to take action. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to pass the floor back, or at least the screen back, to Liz. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I thought it would be useful to set a bit of context, which the Ambassador's done a little bit of as well. It's undoubtedly true that the global figures for food loss and waste are shocking. Around a third of all food is lost or wasted, and this costs the global economy nearly $1 trillion every year. But what is still not widely recognised is the magnitude of the greenhouse gas emissions associated with food loss and waste. They represent around 8% of global emissions. So cutting food loss and waste could make a significant difference to greenhouse gas emissions. And the reality is that we won't meet climate targets without tackling food loss and waste. There are, of course, many other impacts from food waste. The land wasted because it was used for agriculture, for production of food that was then wasted or lost. The water used to produce that wasted food. Food loss and waste accounts for 1/4 of all the water used in agriculture. And the societal impacts. For example, at the same time as wasting all this food, nearly 8 million people go to bed hungry every day. And the loss of all that food that should have provided an income, a sustainable income for smallholder farmers. Food is lost or wasted at all points along the supply chain, at farms, in storage and distribution, in manufacturing, in retail and in hospitality, and by us as end consumers. So we all have a role to play in helping to reduce the amount that's lost and wasted. And COVID-19 has highlighted the lack of resilience in our food system. We've seen horrible images of milk being poured down the drain, crops left in the fields or ploughed back in, chickens being slaughtered and disposed of. There have been lots of issues, but various ones come back to the things like the collapse in the hospitality sector, which suddenly removed an end market and the system wasn't able to cope. It wasn't able to divert food to retail where there was an increased demand. However, COVID also had some positive signs with changes in consumer behaviour. And certainly in the UK, households did change their behaviour, and the amount of food being wasted by UK households went down during the lockdown periods. And I hope some of that will get discussed in the second panel session later. As the Ambassador said, SDG 12.3 is aimed at addressing this issue of food loss and waste. And Champions 12.3 is a coalition drawn from public sector, private sector and NGOs that was set up to help drive progress. And there's an opportunity for anyone on the call who wants to be part of the wider network of organisations working towards food loss and to reduce food loss and waste to join as friends of Champions 12.3. And there's a simple form to complete which will be available after this event. And I will follow up afterwards with anyone who's interested in joining as a friend of Champions 12.3. Champions 12.3 has set out a really simple strategy: target, measure, act. We want as many businesses and as many countries as possible to set targets, to measure, and then take action to reduce food loss and waste. There is a clear business case for tackling food loss and waste. The median company has a 14-to-1 payback for reducing food waste. And there's a clear financial case for us as citizens. The average family with 2 children in the UK wastes around £700 a year on food waste. And for governments, there's the reduced cost from far less food waste to manage. So what can be done in practice, and how is the battle going? That's the main topic of the conversation today, and know that the speakers and the panel sessions will explore some of that, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. And I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, who is Charla Halverson from IKEA Foods. So Charla is the Global Health and Sustainability Manager for Food at IKEA, at Inter IKEA. And IKEA has been doing some leading work to reduce food loss and waste, which I hope Charla is going to tell us about. Charla, over to you.
Thank you so much, Liz. I'm very happy to be here. So thank you for inviting me to this event and letting me share a little bit about what we do at IKEA. So I want to talk a little bit about what we do with food waste across the value chain at IKEA, and we'll then do a bit more of a focus into some particular areas that we have focused on. So as a starting point, with IKEA, we have a very compelling vision to create a better everyday life for the many people. And we apply this to all aspects of our products and our offering at IKEA. And we also want to be creating a positive impact on people and society and the planet. And we bring this into an area that we call the 3 roads forward. So this is our vision and the direction and how we achieve it. And when we think of IKEA, obviously we generally think of furniture and sofas. But in the words of our famous founder, Ingvar Kamprad, it's tough to do business with an empty stomach. And so food has actually been part of the offering at IKEA for several decades. It's something really integrated into our offer, into our brand. And it's something that after furniture, often the first thing that comes to people's mind are 1 or 2 of our different food offerings, like the meatball or our cinnamon buns. So it's something very closely interlinked with the brand. What we have said is when we look at sustainability, we really want to be focusing on delicious, healthy, and sustainable food at price points for the many. So it's really something where if we're talking about a better everyday life for the many people, it needs to be affordable to the many people. So when we look at food loss and waste, one of the ways we can make it affordable to the many people is to make sure that we're not wasting the food along the value chain and the money as well that goes with it along the value chain. We at IKEA look at food loss and waste in farms, in the manufacturing, in the consumer-facing business, and then of course at home. And where I'm going to focus today is really within this retail operations waste, where we've taken some really significant steps and made some big movements forward. So our IKEA Food Waste Initiative, Food is Precious. In 2017, we launched this, our goals and our initiative with this. And we committed then to measure and diminish food waste in all our stores globally by 50% by the end of fiscal year 2020. Now for IKEA, fiscal year ends in August. We didn't actually meet this goal, but we had a lot of learnings and progress along the way, and I'm going to talk you through a little bit of what we've done. So obviously COVID-19 has had an impact on our implementation, and we've had many learnings from our successes and our setbacks, both related to COVID-19 as well as just related to the general rollout of the our Food is Precious initiative. One of the key components that we've found for a successful rollout, these are really the key learnings that we've been able to pull back together, is that we need to have strong leadership, and we have to have an engaged and diverse group of stakeholders, from senior leaders all the way to the leaders actually really in the restaurant, on the floor, and dealing with customers. We need clear communication. We need support and engagement packages going out to the people on the front line who are really working with the food waste, ongoing training and learning, having these customized incentive plans to motivate people towards it, and then of course having a celebration culture around the reductions that you've made. And as a result of what we've done so far, we're really proud of this, that we have 60% of all of our stores that have implemented the food waste solution. And these stores have reduced their food waste on average by 32%. Across all of IKEA, we've have around a 21 million euros saved. It's a huge amount of money, and 10.7 million meals not wasted. And on top of this, 20.7 million kilograms of CO2 impact avoided. So we're talking about really a win-win-win-win situation when we are addressing food waste within our stores. And what we have done is really looked at the different solutions. We started out with 2 different solutions that we tested out in quite a number of stores. And now we've narrowed it down and are working, we went through an extensive process of requesting quotes and really mapping out the experiences in the different stores as well. And while both solutions were really fabulous, we decided in the end to go with Winnow. And Inca, actually one of our largest franchisees, invested as well in Winnow. So there's a lot of motivation as well and belief in the system going forward. And as you can see, you'll hear from Mark, I think after me, to talk a little bit more about the solution and what they offer. And what we've done now, as we've seen that we haven't achieved our 50% goal for 2020, we've really looked at it and we've mapped out a very strong implementation plan, market by market, really looking at how do you upgrade the stores who have already implemented, and how do you bring stores on who have not implemented as well. And so what we're going to be doing in this process of rolling out the implementation is really looking at this technology scaling of the computer vision and the machine learning. So we really want to bring this technology into it, this excitement into it, but it also brings coworker engagement and also reduces the amount of time and work that a coworker is going to have to put into tracking and mapping the food waste that they have. So as a result of this, we've built out our plans, and we have a very realistic plan now to diminish our food waste in our retail production operations by the end of 2022. So it's a lot of work. We've really put together a strong task force to make sure that we can meet this, even though we didn't meet our original 2020 goal. So we've got some strong activities and action going on for retail, but what we also are looking at is in the supply chain as well. We have signed up to the 10 by 20 by 30 initiative to reduce food waste by 50% within our supply chain. So it's the 10 of the largest food companies getting 20 of their largest suppliers to commit to reduce their food waste by 50% by 2030. And we've had quite a lot of engagement already. We have a number of suppliers who've signed up and have committed externally to the 50% reduction and are continually moving forward and getting more and more suppliers to sign up for that. And then, of course, being IKEA, we have quite a lot of opportunities in our full range for reducing food waste and life at home. And we have a lot of solutions already out there today. And this is something that we really believe in and will continue to look at more solutions and more ways to make reducing food waste at home easier and simpler for people everywhere. On top of this, we really want to look at beyond our 2022 for food waste. What else do we need to be looking at, and what else do we need to be doing? So we have now our revised goal for food waste for 2022. We already have pre-existing commitments to have 20% of our sales in main meals and snacks coming from healthier products according to our balanced meal norm, and 20% to come from plant-based. And these are 2022 goals that we looked at. And we've said, what do we need to do? What is really this big movement that we can make that will have the impact to align with all of the external reports, to align with the different roadmaps to healthy and sustainable food in the future? And now we've also just a couple of weeks ago announced that we are committing to have 80% of our main meals in our restaurant to be healthier, which is really a big movement. So when you walk into the store, you'll only have one or two choices in front of you that would be indulgent, and the rest will be something that can be part of your healthier eating. And then we will also have 50% of our main meals be with a plant-based protein, and 80% will be non-red meat. So you'll walk into a store and you'll really have an offer in front of you that will enable you to live a healthy and sustainable life. And at the same time, we'll be taking all the steps we need to make sure that we've minimized the food waste as much as possible around it as well. So we have a really exciting future in front of us and a lot of work to do. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Charla. It's really fantastic to see the progress you're doing, and I know the level of commitment is it comes through every time I speak to you. So as Charla said, we're now going to hear from Mark. So we'll have a seamless transition from IKEA to Winnow. So I'd now like to introduce Mark Saunds, who's the co-founder of Winnow. And Winnow builds artificial intelligence tools to help the hospitality sector. And it's very much at the forefront of driving innovation in this space. So I look forward to hearing what Mark's going to talk about. Over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Liz. And first of all, just to say thank you all very much for the time and for being part of this. Really excited to both take a moment to celebrate a lot of the successes that are being made in addressing the goals to 12.3, but to hopefully strengthen the coalition of organizations that are going to be needed if we are going to achieve what is a very ambitious goal. Today, just what I want to talk to you guys about is I want to take you through sort of our approach around partnership and innovation. And the frame through which I'm going to talk about it is going to be talking through 3 different specific clients that we work with, and various pieces of sort of how we have tried to continue to push forward how technology can help to solve the problem of food waste. So we'll just go into that now. First of all, just a little bit of background about Winnow. Winnow is a worldwide business. We are headquartered in London, founded here, but we have offices in London, in Romania, in Dubai, in Singapore, in Shanghai, and in Chicago, in the United States. We are in hundreds to thousands of kitchens worldwide. We focus on one thing, which is how much food waste we are helping our clients prevent. It is the metric that drives all decisions in our business. It is our impact metric as a social enterprise that we report to our stakeholders and our investors. And today we're saving the clients we work with about $42 million a year in food from being wasted. That's about 36 million meals that are no longer being wasted per annum, and about 61,000 tons of CO2 that's there. There are a number of organizations that we work with. We're trying to help every kitchen really, once there's that commit, help them take the steps to then measure and act, which is a real pleasure to work with so many different organizations on this. I want to dive into three of them, though, and just talk about some of the partnerships that we have. So the first one is with Compass Group. And I think one thing just to talk about, Compass Group, particularly in the UK, was one of the first partners that we had. In fact, the first multinational partner that we started working with. We go way back with them to as early as 2015, when very early versions of our systems were put into place. We have been deployed across all different types of operations with Compass Group. We're in about 12 different countries with them. The average reduction in food waste by value from the sites we're working with is about 47%. And going back to that metric, it's about 4 million meals that have been prevented from going into the bin through Winnow. And of course, Compass Group has many things that they're doing about food waste. We're really proud to be a part of that portfolio of solutions. As we develop the solution, one of the really important things in this is we talk about how we capture the data, but it's really key to think about how do you make sure that you drive the right insights out of the analytics that we have. And a lot of the feedback and stuff that we've been working on with Compass, sort of beyond, continuing to advance the actual part of our system that's in the kitchen, has been around our reporting and our analytics suite. And it's about making sure that there's good visibility to the trends on what's happening around food waste, giving kitchen staff the insights that they need to be able to understand where the food waste is occurring, what they should be doing about it, and how they take action. But then also, how do you aggregate that information up so that you can make more strategic management decisions, say across a portfolio of sites, across a sector, or even across a different country. And then finally, to be able to make that something that is both mobile responsive as well as available on the desktop, which is something that we've heard time and time again is really, really key. The sort of second area of innovation for us is IKEA. And of course, we have a broad relationship with IKEA globally. But the sort of first thing that I always like to sort of bring up when talking about IKEA is the partnership that we had in developing Winnow Vision with IKEA UK. Just if I can point out that obviously this is not what the system looks like today. When you have a partner that's willing to literally show up into your kitchen and with basically sellotape or scotch tape put together a system, as you can kind of see on that top bar, it really shows that you're kind of at the forefront of innovation trying to drive things forward. What we were trying to solve with IKEA was we had worked with them in a number of countries through our classic system, which was simply throwing food away and then kind of entering it onto a tablet. And the shortcoming of that was it was time intensive for staff. It was not necessarily accurate because you didn't know if people were kind of entering the right stuff. And there wasn't kind of the level of depth of insight that you might be able to get out of some image data that we could provide with that. And so we were asking the question with IKEA UK, kind of, can you build an AI system? Because ultimately where you want this to go is that you throw the food away and it is automatically recorded. And that makes it easy for any very, very busy kitchen to sort of measure waste. We were very successful in building that with them. We started with them on the Window Vision program, actually in sort of very early 2017. So this was a number of years ago, but advanced that technology not just to show how it works and prove that it's possible, but to make it kitchen ready. Just an example of how the system works, you can see here in the video that basically it's looking down at the bin, taking a photo of what was before and after thrown away, identifying what was new, and then actually using computer vision and using our algorithms to identify that. And this has really been what we feel is a game changer in kind of how you can measure food waste in kitchens. It needs to be something that is scalable. It needs to be something that's plug and play. And it's something that we have been really proud to co-develop with them and have now been working with a number of companies worldwide on that. It's been very successful with IKEA. Charlotte did mention that we are now rolling out with them worldwide with this technology. Just some of the benefits have been better and more accurate data. The fact that that data is very trustworthy, frankly, kind of easier and more efficient for the stores. Has actually led to, for the countries using it, stepping up and actually moving from kind of almost hitting their target on waste reduction to then delivering on that. And then frankly, it's a sense of coworker pride that you have a really advanced piece of technology in here to be able to drive that. And that's been really exciting for us to be a part with. The final piece that I'll talk about is a client that we haven't really shouted about a lot about yet, but there's going to be some stuff coming out soon. Melco, which is a large hospitality group actually in Macau. They have a number of casinos. They are located in a number of countries. We're working with them in City of Dreams at the moment, which is one of their flagship properties. It's a little bit smaller at scale, but it's just higher in complexity, actually, if you kind of think about the number of F&B outlets and the complications that they have. We've been able to reduce food waste with them by about 67%, saving 4 tons of food waste from being wasted, and it's been a real success story for us, which we're excited to talk about. And kind of where that innovation has come is beyond the AI, how do you use the power of the images that we're actually capturing to train that AI? And honestly, nothing hits home more than sort of seeing the food physically being thrown away. Because we are using the data to sort of train our AI system, it's something that we see on a regular basis, but then being able to go back to the customers that we work with and saying, here's what you were throwing away before, here's what you were throwing away after, which is both important from sort of a messaging and a behavior change for the kitchens that we're working with, as well as just kind of making this issue of food waste a lot more real. It goes beyond that. This is not the City of Dreams operations. It's a different property that we're working with in Europe, but these images have insights in and of themselves. And if you believe it or not, these images are 3 different images of peppers and 3 different images of salmon. And these are real pictures we've seen from kitchens of when you are trimming food, how you can have poor yield management and how you can have good yield management. And really making sure that you are optimizing, not just making sure you're producing the right amounts, but making sure that you're really getting the very most out of all of the food that's coming into your kitchen has been yet another opportunity that we've been able to highlight through our vision technology, and really managing that yield is key for that. So, you know, just to close, we're a business that is continually trying to push the envelope on how we help our clients solve the problem. We are in service of them. We are now really proud that we have what we feel is a solution for every kitchen. Not every kitchen is going to be at the scale of an IKEA restaurant or of a large casino. And so for that, and many operators have many different sizes of kitchens. We've got everything from a very simple system we call Track, which is basically an app-based technology. It's at the sort of lowest cost profile that allows you to digitize that data, allows you to easily capture that data in a kitchen, but of course will require a little bit more work. Our classic product, which is sort of Waste Monitor, which is you're then recording the items and you're tagging it in. And then of course our flagship system, which many of our clients are adopting, which is the Vision technology, driving the power of that AI, driving the power of those images, and really automating the process and giving data quality as part of that informs and is really foundational to a strategy to minimize food waste across a business. So with that, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and look forward to the panel discussion after this.
Thank you so much, Sir Mark. That was fascinating stuff on the power of images. So as Mark says, we're now going to be moving on to our first panel session, which is going to look at food waste in catering operations. And the first panel session is going to be chaired by Chantal Nicholson, who I'd now like to introduce to you. Chantal is a multi-award-winning chef owner of Treadwell's and Allswell restaurants in London. And I'm delighted to say that she's also just recently joined the board of LWARB as a non-exec director. Chantal is going to introduce the other members of her panel, but I will now hand over to you, Chantal.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, really delighted to be here and great to see so many people participating already. We've got a really interesting panel discussion, quite a tight time frame, but really wanting to talk about, I guess, food waste challenges, both pre-COVID and obviously what's happening now when we're in this kind of interim period, especially in the UK. And then also in terms of practical initiatives, what have the panelists actually found to have the most positive impact? I know for myself that COVID's had a massive impact on actually being able to plan, which obviously is really important for lowering and reducing, minimising food waste. So interested to hear what everybody else has to say as well. So you have heard from Mark Zorns from Winnow and also Charlotte Halverson from IKEA. We also have Laura McMullen joining us from Compass today. So Mark, given you've just been speaking, let's start with you again. If you could just give us an insight into those questions.
Yeah, so I think the first question is kind of what were the biggest challenges, pre-COVID, and for us it was how do you make food waste measurement and prevention scalable for a large organization? The reality is that even with the most committed organizations that we work with, you've got kitchens of different sizes spread around the world, and how do you have something that is truly scalable? And for us, we ask ourselves and we target how do we save $1 billion in food waste from occurring, and if we're going to target that, we have to be thinking about scale. So that's the first piece. COVID has clearly had an enormous impact on the hospitality industry, and frankly has impacted us as well. We have many clients we work with that either have dramatically reduced volumes or are basically just shut. We have a reasonable sized business in cruise lines, and you won't have to pay that much attention to the news to know that most of them are basically parked right now for what they do. Part of this has been us. We take a long-term view, as do our investors, and so we work with a number of our clients to say, how do we support you through this period of time, and how do we have a long-term partnership? We have really seen strong resolve from organizations that we work with that food waste remains on the agenda, which is fantastic. But frankly, where it sits on the agenda is for many of the operators, kind of how do we get back to work first? And when we get back to work, now that we have we're under some real significant financial pressure, food waste is both an environmental, but really is a key point of survival in terms of food cost margins and so forth. And so what we have seen with that and sort of an evolution of our thinking is we have continued to invest in our technology. We have our of course, our Vision solution for many clients, but it's really been partly that Track solution that has been part of it. We recognize that all kitchens need a way to measure food waste. How do we make this applicable to every single kitchen? And so we've come in to really be able to help make that happen.
That's really helpful. And I guess, yeah, as we said, in terms of the scale and, you know, financially, it's a tricky time for everybody. So I guess to invest into new things takes a little bit more than it would have previously. I'd like to also now bring in Charla, if you could come on and, yeah, obviously talk about a few of the challenges you've had and some positive impacts as well.
Yeah, I think Mark actually summarized a lot of the challenges really well. With an organization the size of IKEA, where we are in 52 countries around the world, one of the challenges has been executing it globally. There's a lot of different countries have taken different approaches to it. There's also countries that have already made a lot of progress before the measurement solution has been implemented, and then how do you go from the first implementation to that kind of continuous engagement and follow-up in order to make sure that that the improvement keeps going forward and that people don't lose motivation. So these are some of the challenges that we looked at pre-COVID, and within the current environment that we have right now. Exactly as Mark said, you know, in different countries around the world, some of our stores are actually, the restaurants are closed, the whole store is closed, and some, the store is open, but the restaurants are closed, and then in some they will have a limited amount of offer as well. So it's kind of a rapidly changing environment, and it can go from, you know, a full service to, you know, having to really shut down and close the restaurant within a few days, depending on the different government policies. So you have to be quite agile and move around. And there, the priority is on the people within the restaurants as well, and making sure that they are taken care of. And I think we're really lucky at the moment that we do have this still very strong commitment to the food waste reduction, that we do have, you know, the committed investment and the commitment that we are going to make it happen, you know, whether we're able to open the store immediately or whether the store is going to be closed for a long time. And I think one of the challenges that we'll face on the other side of COVID-19 is that it can take quite a while for the food services to get back to full capacity. And then how do you plan for that right number of meals to prepare to not have food waste when you don't know how many people will actually come into the store? You don't have any historical information to look at.
Can I just pick up on that, which is to say that at least our data echoes that. We've been working with a number of clients to understand what food waste is. And I think there's a perception that with lower volumes, food waste will be lower. And certainly sort of total volumes may be down. But what we are seeing, in fact, is that sort of in the recovery periods, and we see this in Asia, more a little bit than we may see in Europe today, because certain parts of Asia are in varying degrees of returning back to normal, that actually waste levels as a percentage, so kind of wastage rates, are up relative to where they were pre-COVID. And I think that speaks to the fact that there's not the same volume to cover up mistakes, and there's the higher level of uncertainty, which just underlines the importance of waste, being conscious of it as we go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. And yeah, I think the uncertainty is what is quite tricky to manage. And obviously with food waste, that's the one thing that can also contribute significantly. I know from my own experience, and also, Charla, as you mentioned, in terms of timeframes of governments locking things down, you don't really get much notice. So what do you do with that excess stock? And also in the first lockdown, we didn't know how long it was going to go on. So it's, you know, there's that question of, well, can we keep things or can we not? And when does that come into play? I think that probably potentially was reflected in figures that you saw, Mark, in terms of actually when things had to kind of go based on that initial lockdown timeframe. So yeah, many moving parts. I'm just going to invite Laura to come on the call now. If you could just briefly introduce yourself, Laura, as well, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chantal. And good to hear from you, Mark and Charla. We have similar challenges when it comes to food waste for sure. So I'm head of sustainability at Compass Group, based here in the UK. We provide food services all over the world, sort of millions of meals every day, both to offices, not so much of that in some of our countries at the moment, but office cafeterias, but also hospitals, schools, aged care homes, sports and leisure events. Again, that's been quite a challenge during the pandemic, and a number of other food services and locations. So food waste as a topic, and I look after the sustainability strategy, which includes environmental, health and well-being, and our wider reach, so responsible sourcing. Food waste is one of our key focus areas, alongside responsible sourcing, and single-use plastics, plant-based meals, all of that element. It has such a big impact on the climate, and it has such a big impact, or it's rather something that we can impact quite closely as we're serving these meals every day. So across our sites, things have really sort of changed quite a bit over the course of this year. We've certainly reduced things like buffets. So often now it's pre-prepared, pre-packed. There's a lot of digital solutions. So you have to either book in advance, or you can order your meal to be picked up at a certain time, or indeed you can come into the cafeteria at a certain time. So in some ways it means there's a different amount of preparing that we are typically doing as a majority at the moment, versus before. So there's an element of planning that gives us more visibility in some ways, but equally when it comes to footfall and actually people coming into the cafeteria, as I think someone mentioned earlier, it's a tricky part to forecast that when we're really going through unprecedented times and things are opening, and so people come back in and then it's closing, so then they don't come back in. So yeah, so it is a real challenge. I think when it comes to food waste management, full stop, I mean, measurement is so key, even if that's just measuring one of the huge food waste bins across some of our sites, not sort of using sophisticated technology. And all our sites, like we have Winnow across some of our countries and sites, actually the measurement is super key, just to sort of get that behavior change, get that consciousness of what's being wasted. I think someone mentioned before, you know, being able to see, having a client see the difference between sort of before and after measuring it is quite strong and powerful. So we've got the digital aspect, and we've got the sort of planning and preparation aspect. And then when it does come to the measurement, key for us is to measure why something is wasted, and then being able to act on the analysis. So looking at, right, what are we doing, you know, in a normal year or a normal month when we might be able to predict and forecast our footfall, then we'd look at what our expectations are of footfall in the restaurants, and we can plan accordingly. I think some of the solutions that we have been using across the globe look at what we would expect sort of site to site, or what we'd expect across that particular sector. And so we can see in different sites, by using consistent measurement, where there's some anomalies, some differences, shall we say, let's go with that. And so you can see that, you know, if there's a lot of over preparation waste in a site, then we'd look specifically at that site versus another one and take some actions accordingly.
Great, and I think, Laura, you also, if I could bring in there, you mentioned staff being a really important part of that as well on our call this morning. I think that was really interesting what you said in terms of actually measuring when certain team members were on. So if you could tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so using technology like Winnow and different measuring techniques to check what the food waste is on a particular day or a particular time of service has meant you can really drill down into what the issue might be and why more is being wasted on that day. And one example would be with a review of the food waste over a certain time period, looking at the patterns within that. So looking at, say, on a Tuesday lunchtime, there's always a lot of preparation waste of vegetables. And we're like, well, why is that? And actually, when you look back and see the sort of the similarities between those particular time periods, we'll see that it's one individual that perhaps hasn't done the training on the most efficient way to chop those vegetables. So actually, instead of using 90% of the lettuce, actually only 60% is being used, which means you're throwing away that extra. So it's really about drilling down into the individual, I guess, sites and the results to then take action accordingly. So then that individual staff member will get trained on this is the most effective and efficient way to chop those vegetables, which then reduces the waste going forward.
I think you touched on a really interesting point there, and it's one that I've experienced myself running kitchens, is the staff training and I guess the staff approach to food waste. And I think traditionally, you know, when I first started in kitchens in London quite some time ago, there wasn't the same, I guess, environmental concern about food waste. There was a financial concern that obviously you wouldn't hit your GP if you were kind of, you know, putting too much in the bin. But I think in terms of actually getting that into people's mindsets of, yes, you know, if there is, how do you, you know, chop something as efficiently as you can in terms of actually making that. So are there any particular things that you've found have worked really, really well in that respect with particular team members?
I'm probably not close enough to the detail, and it's more the individuals, sort of the regional managers and the sort of those that are closer to the efficient working in the kitchen. I'm probably an awful chopper myself, so I probably can't comment on it.
I'd be happy to.
On the point of staff training, Mark was actually going to ask you to kind of come on there and talk about what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit about kind of how we're starting to look at trimmings or yield with our customers, right? And I think first of all, you ask why people cut stuff that way. And the first thing I think you have to break down is that, for example, in this hotel, one of the groups was cutting it this way because they were taught that it was very important on the breakfast buffet to have an exactly nicely slivered cut of pepper that kind of looked like that. It's funny, you start a dialogue, and the wonderful thing about it is that in these kitchens, so many ideas actually come from people that are standing right next to them if you can facilitate that. And immediately someone else came up and said, yeah, but if you cut it this way, then you can kind of solve that problem. So I think it is about training. It's about awareness. I think it's about balancing the sort of perfect presentation with actually making the best use of the resource that's in front of you. But it's also, frankly, just about leveraging the knowledge that already exists often in these kitchens. And if not in that kitchen, within the broader network of chefs within that organization. For example, with IKEA, you know, sometimes there are really great ideas that happen in one part of one country that are then shared with others, and it's facilitating that information sharing that can really help. So it's not any sort of giant secrets with that, but it's about having the focus on it, having the insight to understand that it's happening, to then drive those conversations.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and I think it is about, as you're saying, in terms of, you know, having worked in a, you know, kind of 2 Michelin star kitchen, in terms of actually achieving perfection, how does that translate into wastage? Because at some point, you know, it potentially always will. So again, it's looking at other ways of utilising that waste potentially, which I think is, as you say, that creativity from the teams as well. Michelle, I just want to talk to you about that point as well in terms of training, because obviously you're a huge organisation in terms of actual, I guess, structure. Is there anything that you'd like to contribute to that as well?
I think training is something extremely important, and it's something that we've done in the different countries that we've rolled out. And we've actually also had quite a lot of support from Winnow and from also our other service provider for the measurement, in order to, you know, kind of drill into the details and identify where training needs to happen. And as we go forward with the new implementation plan, where we're really pushing and strongly driving towards it, one of the key areas that we are focusing on is that we will have a strong training package that can be used consistently across many different countries, and requires maybe a little bit less coming back into corporate to ask for for answers and questions, that it's really, we want to focus on empowering people on the floor.
Absolutely, I think that's what it does come down to in terms of, you know, actually that belief in that that's the right thing to do as well. And I know myself, having, you know, managed many kitchens and chefs in kitchens, that sometimes the easier option is just to kind of put something in the bin. So I think it's really instilling that kind of culture that it's not okay to do that. That's kind of the last resort, and it's only if something's spoiled or bad that it does that. So we literally have 2 minutes left, so I just wanted to ask if each of you have anything that you want to kind of finish on as a final note. Laura?
And just a quick point, building on what you said before, Chantal, about behaviour and that sort of behaviour change of understanding the why, tracking it, because if it's not tracked and if it's not analysed, then it's broadly pointless to an extent, because the whole idea is you want to reduce it. So it's all about sort of change management and understanding the why, I'd say, within those kitchens.
Absolutely. Mark, anything else to finish on that point?
Yeah, I think that look, solving food waste in a kitchen is not easy, but it's entirely achievable. It requires focus. It requires measurement so that you can actually drive that. It requires behavior change, but it's within our hands to do it. And would encourage every organization that is perhaps listening to us that if you don't have a food waste strategy, it's a financial no-brainer. Whether you do something on your own or whether you work with a company like Winnow, it's something that we would recommend to everyone, because frankly, it's both economically and environmentally and morally the right thing to do.
Thanks. Oh, sorry, Charlie, you go.
Yeah, I would just build on what both Laura and Mark have said as well, where the measurement is extremely important. This is where you know how to act and where you can go back and do that root cause analysis and make the changes needed. And I would really just say to every organization out there as well, don't try and address everything at once. We know that from the farm all the way to what consumers are doing at home after the fork, there's steps that we need to take as a company. Where we have the most power to act at the moment is really within our restaurants, and this is where we've started. And we're taking steps in every area, but where we can measure and where we can act and where we know we can really demonstrate improvement today is our restaurants. And so this is where we've really started many years ago to do it. And so find that zone that's right for you as a company, where you know you can get the data, you can measure it and make the small steps, and then you can address the other parts as you go along and learn.
Thank you all. I would just add from my final point of view, and I think to echo what Mark said as a strategy, and I think it can just be a cultural, it can just be a chat that actually you are talking about the issue to start with, rather than if it seems too big right now. I think just starting the conversation is super important. Anything is better than nothing. So thank you to Mark, to Laura, and to Charla for your insight. It's been wonderful, and I'll pass you back to Liz.
Thank you so much, everybody. That was really fascinating and lots of practical advice. So thank you for all taking the time. Just a reminder, I can see people are asking some questions, but just a reminder that if you do have some questions, then please put them in the Q&A section and we'll get to as many of them as we can. We're now going to move on to have a country perspective. We are joined by Selina Jewell from Denmark, who's going to talk about her experiences in Denmark. Selina's actually sent us a recording of her presentation as well, so you'll be able to watch her presentation, but know that she's there. So if you've got any questions as we're going through, she'll be able to answer. So Selina is the chair and founder of the Stop Wasting Food movement in Denmark. She's also a fellow champion for 12.3, and she holds a whole range of other roles focused on helping to reduce food waste. As we're just going to have to load up her Selina's presentation, it might take a couple of minutes delay, but I'll let the tech people to take over and start Selina's presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Selina Jewell, the founder of the Stop Wasting Food movement, members of Champions 12.3, and also Reader's Digest European of the Year. Now, today, we are going to talk about stop wasting food and making change happen. Now it's going to be pretty tight because I don't have much time and there's going to be a lot of information, but I know that my presentation will be circulated after my talk today. So, first of all, I want to ask you, everybody, do you know what a UFO is? And no, I'm not talking about the flying saucer. I'm talking about the unidentified, frozen object. It is living in our freezers, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, every second Dane has those UFOs in the freezers because, you know, refrigerators and freezers, they have become the last step before the garbage can. We're storing the food and we are just throwing the food away. Food waste is also about the overconsumption, and it goes like this. Overconsumption is that we buy things that we don't need with money that we don't have to impress people that we don't like. And well, so there's some food for thought. You know it already. About 1/3 of the world's food is either lost or wasted. And at the same time, we have 850 million people who are starving. So food waste is the lack of respect for the nature, for the environment, and for the people. And you can see the food waste 3 times 3 is that 1/3 of the global greenhouse gas emission comes from the food production, and 1/3 of all the world's produced food is either lost or wasted. And there's number 3, because the third ranking, according to the Project Drawdown, is reduction of food waste. It's ranked 3rd among the world's top 10 climate solutions. We have a lot of crises, you know, besides the obvious corona crisis, COVID-19. We have a resource crisis, we have a climate crisis, and we also have a population growth crisis. By 2050, we need to produce 70% more food today. But today, already today, we have enough food on this planet to feed every starving child and every starving woman and every starving man on this planet. Now, I founded the Stop Wasting Food movement 12 years ago in 2008, and it has been escalated. Now, I'm not from Denmark originally. I was born in Soviet Russia. So yes, I did see the empty supermarkets. Yes, our family were very, very concerned about, you know, because we couldn't get food on the table. So I know about the lack of food. And when I came to Denmark, I saw this abundance and I saw all the food waste. And basically, I started to change it. So, I have already told a little bit about myself, and there's like more about myself, a lot of awards, you know, Reader's Digest European of the Year 2020, European Young Leader 2018, and the Nordic Council Nature and Environment Prize, among the many awards and nominations. And of course, I blog on the Huffington Post of New York. I am the member of the EU platform on food loss and waste, and I'm also, of course, the chairman of the board on the Stop Wasting Food movement. Now, we have actually created a revolution, and this revolution is actually started by the consumers. What we did is basically we created a positive change, and you see we work from the entire food value chain from farm to fork. We work with the United Nations, the European Union, the ministries, the governments. We worked with a lot of governments since 2009, and we create a positive change. And you can see, you know, the prime ministers are also official friends of our movement, a lot of, you know, interesting people, and a lot of people in Denmark get activated by Stop Wasting Food. So it's kind of a mobilizing the consumer movement against food waste. And now it's happening also in the industry. in the industry where, you know, they're starting to sell the wonky and ugly fruits and vegetables. Almost every supermarket chain in Denmark are focusing on stop wasting food. And we have, you can see, this is our label, stop spill them out, stop wasting food. It has become a label in itself. And it's introduced on the wonky and ugly cucumbers and tomatoes and all the other fruits and vegetables. We also have the ugly tomato ketchup and also the ugly apple juice made out of people's apples. You can see there's a huge production going on there. And recently there's the ugly organic carrots that are now being sold in the stores due to the stop wasting food movement. So basically we are creating this change. I mean, in 3 years alone, we have saved our 600 tons of ugly fruits and vegetables. We have introduced the doggy bags in Denmark. We are, you know, starting to get education campaigns in schools. We do charity work, 319 plus tons donated to charity of surplus food since 2010. And we also have, you know, the Christmas charity events. We also published books. I have contributed and published 40 national and international publications on food waste. We do campaigns. For example, this one is with the municipality of Copenhagen. My books are winning awards. This is my first book on food waste. And this is a lot of events we did in Denmark and in Scandinavia. I also did 2 TED Talks. You can find it on TED. There are hundreds of thousands viewed on that, and I've been speaking on about 300 conferences for the last 12 years. The biggest one is Nordic Business Forum, 7,500 people. There's a huge audience, and you can see there other speakers were Will Smith, Sir Richard Branson, and Richard Quest from the CNN was moderating. You can see there's a huge crowd to hear about the stop wasting food. Now we are not left or right, we work with everybody. So you can see this is the variety of the ministers that we have been working within the last 12 years. Also, we have a think tank, a government think tank on food loss and waste. And this think tank was my idea, and I've been working for 8 years to put it on the government's agenda, and it succeeded. So yes, we have a think tank as well. I already mentioned I'm a member of the Champions 12.3 Coalition and EU Platform on Food Loss and Waste. Have been contributing to the Joint Declaration Against Food Waste, which actually led to European Commission and United Nations focus on food waste as well. Most recently, I have been speaking in the Vatican and also contributed to the Vatican's book on food loss and waste, which was published 2 weeks ago. So this is the Vatican, and His Holiness Pope Francis is actually focusing on food waste. We mentioned a lot of reports, national, international, you know, many of them. I also have been in the FAO, the World Food Day Zero Hunger champion, along with, you know, some interesting people. You can see Lambert Wilson. He is the actor from The Matrix, and a lot of other interesting people. We also have a collaboration, and we did that already for almost 5 years with Her Royal Highness Princess Marie of Denmark. Here you can see the princess on the left and her husband, His Royal Highness Prince Joachim, and we did a lot of activities with the princess, cooking at home with the princess, education campaigns, and, you know, opening the food waste stores and the Stop Wasting Food Dinner, the annual International Stop Wasting Food Dinner, which we do every year with a new embassy. Last year, before the coronavirus pandemic, it was with the Swedish embassy. So we're very honored and very happy to collaborate with the princess. And last year I also published a book with the princess. This is a food waste cookbook. It's called Food with Respect. And the lady, you know, in the white blouse is the princess, as you can see that. And we have a lot of chefs and celebrity gastronomy stakeholders in Denmark. So the princess and her children have also contributed to the book, and it's actually won international awards and #1 in the world in the category family at the Gourmand World Food Cookbook Awards 2020. Now we are raising awareness all over the world, and you've probably seen our work in the media, probably seen the BBC video that went viral. It got 30 million views all over the world. 30 million views, that's a lot. And CNN, and this is just, you know, I'm gonna slide it, you know, Economist, New York Times, Independent, Guardian, National Geographic, you name it, we've been there, you know. So we've been featured in the media about 9,000 times, and it is national and international media. So we're spreading the word on stop wasting food every single day in entire world. And this is important. We also have a privilege to, I have a privilege to say hello, to greet His Royal Highness Prince Harry of Wales, who is actually very into stop wasting food. So basically, I could go on with the example, but you will see that afterwards, my presentations. I'll just skip this part. And what I will say is the takeaways. The takeaways is that you need to empower people to stop wasting food. They don't want to hear you if you're saying like you're attacking, you know, the industries or the governments or the companies. They don't want to hear you as an angry activist. You need to empower. You need to have a positive approach. You shouldn't go to extremes, because extremes are not good. This is not about a revolution. This is about a transformation. You need to transform the food system. You need to stop wasting food. You shouldn't do revolution. So this is important. And #3, don't be a food waste police, which basically means that, you know, we are all in there together, and we're part of the problem and we're part of the solution. So basically, we all waste food from time to time. Of course, I do everything in my power not to waste food, but I'm not you know, I'm not a food waste police. So we have to do better, a little bit better, every single day.
Thank you very much, Selena. Wow, you covered a lot of ground there. Carrying on in the same level of momentum, I'd now like to move on to our second panel session, which is going to be introduced and then chaired by Richard Swanell, who is the International Engagement Director at WRAP Global. I've worked with Richard for many years. I know he's very passionate, very knowledgeable about the subject of food waste. So I'm happy to hand over to you, Richard. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much, Liz, and it's great to be here today. And just before I go into the panel session where we're going to talk about, you know, how we reduce food waste and consumption, I just thought I'd bring you up to date on how the Guardians of Grub campaign, WRAP's Guardians of Grub campaign, can help businesses reduce food waste today, particularly as we're hopefully coming out of COVID-19, the pandemic, and how we could therefore provide some support to help deliver food waste reductions now. And then, of course, let me just try that again, and technical. There we go. But first of all, just to give you an idea of the scale of the challenge, this is the scale of the challenge before we went into the COVID-19 pandemic. And that was that the UK hospitality sector throws away 1.1 million tons of food every year, of which 75% is avoidable. That means 13.2% of all the food purchased across the UK hospitality sector is thrown away. And that costs a staggering 3.2 billion. And I was really struck by Mark's point earlier on, and also Chantal's, that Winnow has even seen more food waste coming through during the COVID-19 period, and that just reinforces the importance of tackling this waste. So from January, Guardians of Grub will be relaunching around a focus on financial savings as we begin to build back better. Focusing on reducing food waste is a key element of that. And we're providing materials to help the businesses, help the staff to tackle food waste, simple ways of doing it. And we're going to celebrate the success of the industry in actually driving this change through Food Waste Action Week with the 1st to 7th of March. And so one of the ways that we can help all of the hospitality and food service business is using our online training course to help measure and reduce food waste. And what it does is it's got a lot of materials like videos and training materials, which can actually show what other businesses are doing and illustrate by example. There's a foundation level and there are operation levels going from kitchen porter all the way up to CEO. And it is the course is moderated so we can chart performance, and there's a certificate for completion. And the key thing, it's free for all UK hospitality and food service businesses. So please email Guardians of Grub if you need more information, and use the course because it'll help you save money and help us build back better. And I think what's interesting is just to see the number of people that have actually supported this initiative going around. One of the panelists, Jamie, is up there in the left-hand corner. Thank you, Jamie, very proudly holding a certificate. But I was particularly struck by the words of Albert Roux about this. He said, "We have always instilled a strong ethos in our chefs that everything possible should be done to avoid food waste." It is great to see this being reflected in the Guardian Grub's campaign. No one's profits should end up in the bin, and no one's food waste should contribute to global warming. We totally agree, and Guardians of Grub can help you do that. So that was by way of introduction. It's now my pleasure to introduce the panel 2 discussion. My fellow panelists are Tristram Stewart from the Food Waste Activist, Laura Willingham from City Harvest, and also Jamie Coe from Too Good To Go. And I wonder if I could just ask them all to put their cameras on so that we can see them, and then ask them the first session. Hi Tristram, hi Jamie, and hi Laura. So Tristram, just to set the scene for our discussion on tackling consumption food waste, why is it so important post-COVID to focus on food waste reduction?
Well, I think one of the things that COVID did is accentuate the social inequality that exists in our country and in many other countries around the world. Not just because people who lived in high-rise flats were suddenly forced to stay in them, but in terms of access to food. Hundreds of thousands of additional people faced extreme hardship in terms of their ability to access food. And this really put into a spotlight a problem that's always been there and that really came to light. And I like to look at this problem through the lens of my favorite word, which is companion or companionship. And the same word pops up throughout many different languages. We have compañero in Spanish and Portuguese, copain in French, even Greek, syntrophos. They all mean the same thing. Com means with and pan means bread. A companion is somebody you share food with. And indeed, it is a universal human behavior to use the sharing of food to establish good friendship, to build society, to build that network that we all depend on, both for our physical survival, but also our nourishment, our connection socially as well. And it is indeed a great ape behavior. It's present in all of our great ape relatives. The bonobos share food proactively as a way of building friendship. And I like to think that we can invest in all of our daily lives and in our legislation and the way in which we accept our businesses to operate good companionship. And good companionship means you don't leave people out of the feast. If you did that to somebody right in front of you and you left them out of a meal, that's about the most strong way of stigmatizing somebody. And the way in which humans have come to waste a third of our food, 1.3 billion tons of it every year, that is a quintessential example of bad companionship. The fact that we could lift everyone in the world out of hunger with even just a fraction of the food that currently is wasted in rich countries that is the kind of thing that I think the COVID crisis has really brought home to everyone's attention, that this way of running society, the way of wasting food and leaving people hungry on the other side, that's something that can't go on. And I think that with the renewed interest in the connection to nature and our dependence on nature, that also is a part of good companionship, to live in harmony with the natural world. We see globally, unfortunately, a continuing trend of destruction of the natural world at the hands of the food system. And that problem is not slowing down even, it's still accelerating deforestation, soil erosion and exploitation of water resources. Starting with food waste, as Selena said in her presentation, you know, in Project Drawdown, food waste is in the top 3 opportunities to reduce our environmental impact. And so the fact that we can do all of that whilst helping to increase food availability for people that don't have enough of it, that, to me, if anything has brought it home, COVID, the crisis, has done that.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think the Project Drawdown sort of example is really powerful, just showing how significant food waste reduction can be on helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And I guess, Tristan, are you advocating really a new social norm, therefore, with regard to food waste reduction? Yeah, I mean, I think it is a biological norm. I mentioned bonobos. They're our closest animal relative. You know, when they have surplus food, they go out and find other bonobos to share it with. What they're doing is turning surplus food into social capital. So in addition to all of the wasted resources, I like to think of food waste as a waste of potential friendship. And that's what I think we need to focus on is that, you know, food is both physical, but it's also a very social substance. It's our most important, you know, input. We completely rely on it day to day. And it is the most physical way in which we interact with the natural world each day. It comes out of the ground, it's fueled by the sun. And if we can put that back into the center of our lives, the idea that this is our opportunity to act in good companionship to our fellow humans as well as the natural world. It's such a wonderful thing. You know, my motto, as you know, Richard, is if you want to save the world, you've got to throw a better party than the people destroying it. And, you know, that's why I started a beer company to tackle food waste. We use waste bread and upcycle it into toast ale. This is a way of celebrating the delicious, economically viable, you mentioned money saving. I mean, the fact that people are paying to get rid of bread that can be used either for human consumption or, failing that, to turn it into drink for human consumption. That's kind of a symbol of what we're trying to do. That's good companionship in a bottle. The bread is being shared in its liquid form. And, you know, we just launched at Toast Ale a new campaign called Rise Up. We're bringing out a new kind of beer every month for the next 6 months. And this is a build up to the next COP, saying that food, and in particular food waste, needs to be part of our climate mitigation strategy. The UK government should be putting food waste formally into its NDCs. It's a huge opportunity, and it would be a massive waste if we didn't include food waste reduction into NDCs. These are the ways in which the UK is going to meet its climate emissions reductions targets signed up to in Paris. And, you know, this is all part of the fabric that we need to be working to, and celebrating those delicious and nutritious and economically viable solutions that are right there on the plate, waiting to be capitalized on. Thank you, Tristan. Thank you. Now, moving on to you from Laura. Laura, from the City Harvest perspective, obviously you're very focused on getting more food to those in need, increasing redistribution. What's your vision for surplus food redistribution going forward, particularly in a post-COVID world?
Thank you, Richard. I think it's more important than ever that all businesses make wise decisions about their surplus food. And businesses should adopt a food waste hierarchy whereby any food that is edible should go to people in need rather than waste. So prevention, of course, is first, and products like Winnow and everything absolutely should be used to prevent waste. But if there is any food that's going unused, and that's inevitable in the food industry, it should be redistributed to people in need, especially, you know, at a time post-COVID where so many more people are facing hunger than ever. I think the other options are landfill, animal feed, and anaerobic digestion, and I think many companies donate, send their waste to anaerobic digestion, but mixed in with their food is edible food. So they lump inedible and edible waste together, all going to anaerobic digestion, which in a sense is green energy, but according to this food waste hierarchy, any unusable edible food really should go to people first. I'm pleased that many companies that are on this call today already donate food to City Harvest and know that, but there's so many more companies out there that aren't aware of this. And our vision is for all businesses to make a really authentic change. A lot of them have sustainability messages to the public, but we really want companies to align their surplus food practices along with these sustainability messages. And these clear messages have to go down from the top of the organization to the bottom. People need to be empowered. People on the factory floor or the people that are making decisions about what is edible and what's waste need to be empowered and know that their organization supports getting edible food to people in need. There has to be buy-in at a senior level. Companies need to listen to employees when they identify waste. So I can cite a number of instances at City Harvest where we get calls from people that are relatively low in an organization, but they spot, they're really demoralized by seeing the food waste they see. They call us, they ask us for a solution, and we say, well, you know, you have to make it happen at your organization. You'll need your support. They don't often get this support. I think in a post-COVID world, now more than ever, companies are going to have people throughout their organizations that really think it's unethical to waste edible food. They're going to be asking how they can affect change, and they need to be supported by their managers all the way up to the top. So yeah, that's my vision.
Thank you, Laura. And I love the way you sort of weaved in both the importance in terms of how business will behave, but the ethical reason for change. And there's Tristan talking about good companionship and you thinking about integrating the ethics and of course the critical nature of actually following the food waste hierarchy. And obviously getting food to people is always preferential than getting food to an anaerobic digester for sure. I'll come back to you shortly. I'm just going to introduce Jamie Crummy from Food Too Good To Go, and just to sort of talk a little bit more broadly about engaging people more effectively from the food and the hospitality and food service sector, and more widely in the home as we emerge from the COVID-19 epidemic. Jamie.
Sure, Richard. Yeah, thanks very much for the introduction there. And yeah, as you rightly point out, we're in a unique position, I guess, in Too Good To Go, where we're both speaking on a daily basis to consumers who use our app to rescue food, and businesses who utilize our platform to ensure none of their delicious food goes to waste. So when we're talking about engagement from both sides, it really boils down to me on an awareness point. So it's really making it clear that not only does wasting food, cost businesses or cost individual money and resources, it's also costing the health of the planet. And Tristram's spoken about that, and Liz mentioned it too back in her opening remarks, is just how important fighting food waste is from an environmental perspective. The drawdown report's been quoted a few times, so I won't go into that again, but it really is so important, from an environmental perspective, to be fighting food waste. So really we're seeing there, how fighting food waste and that awareness around it is integral for that engagement. And with that, it's a change in perception as well. Fighting food waste doesn't need to be something, it's just for eco warriors or the zero waste specialists in the world, nor is it something, that's just there for big businesses, with those with big budgets or even deeper pockets. Fighting food waste is something for everyone. And that's, you know, that is central to it as well. It's about keeping this fight against food waste something that's simple and accessible. So removing these barriers, and you know, this is where, you know, I fundamentally see technology in playing, you know, such a huge part. Going back to the environmental message, you know, we've done research ourselves, and I know you've done it as well, Richard, at RAP, is this lack of awareness in the British public, which stems both from businesses and consumers, of the connection between climate change and food waste. And you know, this is where, you know, technology can be a huge bridge in clearing that confusion up. So, you know, when we're looking at businesses themselves, you know, we're seeing how, you know, time is of the essence. It's you know, it's a complete it's resource heavy. There's costs and tight margins. So there is a lot of balls in the air, so to speak, when we're talking about food businesses. So what can technology do to keep things simple, keep things accessible? And you know, when we're looking at smartphones or apps in the form of Too Good To Go, you know, 98% of the British public has access to a mobile phone, and you know, it's a huge amount of that have access to smartphones as well. So, you know, in that sense, you know, apps are simple and intuitive by their very nature, and we have a solution in essence, you know, in our pocket already. So it goes back to these key things, these key themes around engagement, which is awareness, you know, a shift in perception, and just, you know, making accessible and simple solutions for people to get on board with.
Thank you, Jamie. That's great. And I love the way you've connected again the importance of linking to climate change, but also that link of making it simple for people to act. Yeah, we want to create a new social norm for people to actually reduce food waste, but also make that as simple as possible. And I think you're dead right. I think technology has a key role to play there. So I'm now going to pose a challenging question to all three of the panelists, and to sum up, if you had 3 things to help reduce food waste, either across London, across the UK, or across the world, what would they be? And we have 30 seconds to do that. And I'm going to start that challenge with Laura. Laura, how would you respond to that challenging question?
I think in order to motivate more businesses to donate food in London, the UK, and globally, we need to change the language with regard to food waste. So at City Harvest, we call it surplus food because food isn't waste until it's wasted. So food waste has connotations that it's not fit for human consumption, but food is often wasted for any number of reasons, and much of it is fit for consumption. So change the language, consider it something that's usable. And the other thing is infrastructure. In London, we're fortunate enough to have food redistributors that businesses can call on if they have surplus food. In many places around the UK and the world, there's not an infrastructure. There's not an organization like City Harvest that has vans, warehouses, and the capabilities to safely redistribute surplus food. So that's needed.
Great, thanks, Laura. And over to you, Jamie, your 3 things.
Yeah, my 3 things, and this again would be heavily from a business perspective, would just be ambitious. It's around collective action, and it's adopting simple solutions and mass adoption of them. So really be ambitious with your food waste targets. Food waste and fighting food waste is for all. Collective action, you know, work with other people and find out what other resources are there. But simple solutions can go very far. So whether that's using the likes of Too Good To Go, or whether it's implementing Winnow as well, using as many tools at your disposal to try and have an impact.
Thank you, Jamie. And over to Tristram for our last 30 seconds. Over to you, Tristram.
So if you just look in the UK consumers have reduced by 1/3 the amount of food per capita that they waste since we started recording it in 2008. That is a massive achievement, and we should celebrate that. Looking at the UK as a whole, we've become the first country to get halfway to the Sustainable Development Goal of reducing food waste by 1/2 by 2030. That again is a massive achievement that should be celebrated. On an individual level, therefore, people are already doing the right thing and need to carry on. On a national level, we're doing the right thing and we need to lead the way. And that has international significance because everyone is watching us saying, wow, okay, so they got halfway to the SDG. How did they do that? If you look at the fact the UK government has just put out, was due to put out a consultation this month, is postponed it as a result of COVID. But the consultation is on a law to make food waste reporting mandatory for big businesses across the UK. That is the kind of hard-hitting, novel, and will be very effective piece of policy to tackle food waste. And again, if we show that it works here in the UK, international observers will follow suit. They'll want to see that effective route for mobilizing businesses, mobilizing policymakers, and mobilizing consumers. Now, as we've all mentioned, keeping it fun, keeping it engaging all the way along the line. So, you know, if you need something sweet to wash this down with, just go and order Rise Up Toast Ale. All the profits go towards feedback, so your money will be used to contribute towards tackling this problem. We're encouraging all our drinkers at the same time to write to their MPs to encourage them to keep food and the environmental impacts of food central in environmental policy going forwards within the context of COP, but also generally. So really mobilizing people with something fun and engaging, and showing that we can do it. Thank you so much. And it's been a privilege to be alongside the personified companions, Jamie and Laura, and of course yourself, Richard, leading the way. I'll shut up now.
Yeah, thank you, Tristram, and thank you for that shameless plug of Toast Ale at the end there. And I will say also, don't forget, Guardians of Grub is here to help, and it's free to help your business reduce food waste. And if you'd like to show your commitment to to reducing wasting food and hitting the SDG goal of halving food waste, don't forget the UK Food Waste Roadmap. We're here to help. Thank you. Over to you, Liz.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, everybody. That was another fascinating discussion. Very high energy and lots of great comments and insights. So we're now going to have another different perspective, and this time we're going to take a city angle. And I'd like to introduce Claire Pritchard, who's the chair of the London Food Board, which advises the Mayor of London and the GLA on food matters. Claire, it's a privilege and a pleasure to have you here. So please tell us more about the work in London.
Thank you, Liz. It's a real privilege for me to be here too, although I'm completely distracted by the thought of Toast Ale at the moment. So I'm just trying to focus back on the subject. So yeah, it's an honour to be here, and I'm very proud to represent the Mayor and the London Food Board. And just to say a little bit about the Food Board, we've had an integrated food strategy, a London Food Board, since 2005. And I was thinking back about it because and what we were looking at then, and even we did a year's work looking at farm to fork. And when we wrote that strategy, it took in a lot of consideration about food surplus and food waste. And I think it's great to see how much has moved on, and listening to what Tristan has just reported about behaviour and what's happening in this country and in this city. I think it's something, like he says, to be incredibly proud of. In 2007 to 2009, the Good Food Training for London programme launched, and I think it trained between maybe up to 5,000 people. I remember some of that included knife skills training for public sector catering staff in Barking and Dagenham, 400 staff, and it was all about using better knife skills to reduce food waste. So it's a journey we've been on for a very long time. So when Sadiq became mayor, he asked for us to review the London Food Strategy, which was then launched January last year. And it's been designed and developed as a cross-cutting strategy, referring to and influencing other mayoral strategies, including the environment strategy. It's got 6 chapters, and the 6th chapter is all about the environmental impact of food, but it's cross-cutting. And we have to consider reducing food waste when we think about household food insecurity, and we've talked about food surplus and the amazing work that Laura does, but also the behaviour of our businesses, our public sector. We have to consider it in every part of our food economy and every part of our consumption and production. He also launched the London Environment Strategy, where the Mayor committed to cutting London's food waste by 20% per person by 2025 and 50% by 2030. He's also a champion of SDG 12.3, very proud that he became a champion. We've also supported programmes like Trifocal and the GLA's own work, Food Save, and I was very proud to be part of LWARB's launch of Food Doesn't Have to Cost the Earth back in June of this year. Also, that by further work will be by 2020 that every borough will have roadside food waste collection. Currently, we have 24 boroughs that already offer curbside food waste collection. For the London Food Strategy, I think there's a lot of elements of it that already are considering and taking action around food waste. So we have the Healthy Catering Commitment, which is a piece of work we do with fast food outlets. And actually the original programme, the forerunner of the Healthy Catering Commitment was some work that was done, I think, in Waltham Forest. And it was initiated because of the level of food waste and street food waste because of portion sizes. So, you know, the portion sizes are too big and there was loads of food waste and street litter, and it initiated work by local councillors. And what came from that was the Healthy Catering Commitment, which was also about reducing food waste, but reducing portion size, which has an impact on improving health. So it shows how integrated all of these subjects are. We also have local food partnerships supported, like Sustainable Food Cities, which I'll talk about a little bit more. But there's the work that the Mayor can do about supporting good food businesses. And there's been a piece of work that's been done earlier this year looking at the business support programme and framework in London, and thinking about how we embed all of the mayoral strategies within the delivery of food business support, and particularly support to new food businesses. Because I think and it's fantastic the work of Winnow and everyone, but going into businesses when they're already up and running and asking them to change their behaviour, and what we need is businesses starting with this behaviour embedded. And similarly, we're looking at a college for food for London and how we network colleges that are teaching people to be chefs. And again, I think we need to be embedding this in all of the learning. There was a comment about children and how do we embed this in like children's attitude or children's understanding. And I've got a 14-year-old today that was just writing about climate change and was just writing about the impact of food waste on climate change. And I think it's there, but I think embedding it in our education, embedding it in our learning. So we have this opportunity with our role with the Mayor and the London Food Strategy to say, please, can you align your education, your training, your adult learning? And he has the adult learning budget for London to look at addressing food waste. I also think there's something about social enterprise models that, and some work that we're looking around social enterprise, which are driven by social values and are very adaptable and keen. We've seen amazing social enterprise models when we're looking at the reduction of food waste. And Tristan gave the example of Toast Ale. I'd really like one in Greenwich, one of those. We've got loads of surplus bread. And then food surplus, and calling it food surplus, and the role it's had in terms of supporting food aid, and particularly during COVID, that huge mobilisation of food surplus through the London Food Alliance. But where's the next step with that? How can that be used to develop social enterprise? And absolutely prevention first, but as Tristan says, using this food surplus to create more social capital. So since COVID, the Mayor has launched 9 missions, 9 recovery missions for London. And again, I think this is another opportunity to really embed these as cross-cutting themes. And one of the ones I've been really involved with is the creation of healthy food environments, which are very much local environments that look at how the full environment around a community can support healthy food behaviour. And in it is embedded sustainability and looking at food waste. And I think it's just really important that we continue to see this as a cross-cutting theme and make the opportunities of the whole food strategy, and think about in every time we're working with food or connecting with food, whether it's initiating them or creating premises for them, that we embed this in our approach for creating new businesses. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about London today.
Thank you so much, Claire. That was really interesting. And so continuing the city theme, I'd now like to introduce Emma Chow, who leads the food initiative at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and Jean Billon, who's the senior business advisor in the LWARB team, and leads on the LWARB work with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation on food. London is a strategic partner city for the EMF initiative. So I'm looking forward to hearing more from both Emma and Jean about the work that's going on and which is planned. Over to you. I think Emma first, I think.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Liz. I'm going to start sharing my screen so you can see. And I will spend the first few minutes just setting the scene at the global level, and then I'll hand over to Jean so that he can dive into the work in London specifically. Okay, so imagine if our food could actually help to reverse the climate crisis. And the great thing is that food is part of nature, so it has the potential to be a big part of the solution to our global climate crisis and biodiversity loss challenges. But unfortunately, in today's highly linear food system, this by no means is the case. And when we mean linear, what we're talking about is the highly extractive nature of today's food system. So we're drawing from all these different finite resources, including fresh water, fossil energy, and soil, to grow our food, also in ways that is very polluting and emitting lots of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. And then after we've created this damage through the production, we're also letting so much of this food go to waste, which all the other speakers have brought to life in many ways already. So I won't drill into that too much, but I'll highlight that figure that you see at the end there on the far right, which is 2.8 billion tons of organic waste is piling up in cities globally each year. And less than 2% of it is being collected and treated in a circular way. So 98% is contributing to emissions and climate change. But of course, again, that doesn't need to be the case because we can do valuable things with it or prevent it in the first place. Oops, there we go. And so how can we potentially reimagine and redesign today's highly linear food system? Well, that's where the principles of circular economy come in. So we have our 3 principles, which is eliminating waste and pollution, keeping products and materials in use, and regenerating natural systems. So how do we reimagine today's food system by design so that's regenerative and waste is no longer even a concept? And cities have a big role to play in this, especially because about 80% of the world's food is expected to be eaten in cities by 2050. So by using their demand power, cities can send signals and source food that is grown regeneratively rather than in a damaging way in the first place, and connect with local sourcing where it's appropriate. They can make the most of food and eliminate that concept of waste altogether so that any surplus edible food is being prevented or redistributed in the first place, and any byproducts, the portions that we can't eat, we're still making use of. We're turning it into compost, biofertilizers, feeds for fish and livestock, even biomaterials for broader use in the bioeconomy, and capturing bioenergy as a co-product of generating those material outputs. And then cities and the actors within them, including food manufacturers, retailers, chefs, etc., can be designing their products and dishes and menus to be embedding those other 2 principles. So both designing out the waste and sourcing more diverse ingredients that are grown regeneratively. And if cities do this around the world at scale by 2050, we can anticipate benefits worth $2.7 trillion is what we found in our research published in 2019. And within those benefits, which cross health, economic, and environmental domains, about 4.3 billion tons of saved carbon dioxide emissions are captured within that. So cities have a big role to play, and that's also why we started working with 3 cities, which are London, Sao Paulo, and New York. And we started working with these 3 strategic partner cities in June of 2019 to really be bridging both the public sector and also private sector and NGO space to be supporting concrete demonstration of that vision that I just showed on that last slide in action on the ground, and show that it can be done, it can work economically and produce benefits for the environment and society more broadly. and these solutions can be done in a replicable and scalable way. So I will pause there and now hand over to Jean so he can pick up right where I left off on London.
Thanks so much, Emma, for introducing the initiative. And I will be telling you about the work we are leading in London. So in London, the initiative is a partnership of 3 stakeholders, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the London Waste and Recycling Board, and Greater London Authority on behalf of the Mayor of London. And really our ambition and vision is to create a city where food is deeply valued, sustainably produced, and never wasted. And to do that, we work on 2 main work streams, let's say. So one is evidence-based policy and intervention. So it's direct intervention to fix some of the system issues. And then we want to build a consortium of key players across the food value chain to lead the circular economy for food transition. So in terms of evidence-based policy, we are doing quite a lot of work on analytic and research. So we want to understand the baseline situation, the current situation, assess the current flow and understand what the biggest environmental hotspots are. And what we find is, not surprisingly, animal-based product consumption is one of the biggest environmental hotspots. So for example, 4.4% of the food consumed by weight is meat, and it represents 32% of the greenhouse gases emission. And as has been discussed thoroughly before by all the panelists, an enormous amount of this food is being wasted. Almost a quarter of the foods entering the city is wasted in London. So mostly by households and hospitality and food service business sector. So what's sad is most of this food is avoidable food waste, and also a small portion of it actually goes to in-vessel composting and anaerobic digestion, where you can produce energy and the nutrients can be cycled back into the field to grow more foods, as Emma was saying. So we will be refining this work. So we have some missing piece, for example, in the commercial sector, and we welcome any kind of partnership to gather some data on food waste in the commercial sector in London. We're doing some work on this. We also want to publish a report with this research in the new year, probably in March, with also some proposition for policies and intervention to fix these issues in the food system. But we also have some direct action. So as Claire was mentioning, we have been working with households, so like with the trifocal program, for example, to reduce food waste. We have a new program that will start really soon on with young people, so from 15 to 34, called Food Wave. So it's really raising awareness of young people on the issue of food waste. We also worked with hospitality and food service industry with a circular economy guide we produced back in June that Claire mentioned. And really the aim was to provide practical recommendation that restaurants and food businesses can take to reduce waste, reduce environmental impact, but also reduce cost and improve business, the bottom line, which is like all key ingredients for a green recovery for an industry that has been critically hit by the COVID-19 crisis. And the London Waste and Recycling Board has received a grant from the Mayor of London for the Green New Deal, and some of it will be redirected to this industry, the food service industry. We're also really excited about this upcoming event. It's called Meet the Buyer Food Innovation, and that's catalyzing innovation in this industry to reduce food waste. So we heard from companies such as We Know and Too Good To Go, but there's many others in London providing solutions to reduce food waste, to reuse food surplus, to upcycle, recycle food waste. So this event is really an opportunity for you to meet them. So we want to facilitate some collaboration between food businesses and innovators. So my colleague will pop a link in the chat for you to register if you're interested in this. And finally, enough talking about us. I want to talk about you. We really want you to join this initiative, and we're building this consortium of stakeholders from across the board. So as Emma was mentioning, from farmers to food manufacturers, retailers, also local institutions, charities. And we want to basically build a consortium of organizations committed to the 3 pillars mentioned by Emma, but also developing some action on the ground, and some demonstration projects with tangible impacts on these 3 pillars. And this initiative is supported by the Deputy Mayor of the Environment in London, which really highlighting the role of this initiative to contribute to London green recovery from COVID-19. And I'll stop it there and hand it back to you, Liz. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sean. And thank you also, Emma. It's really good to hear about the work that's going on, and thanks for the prompt on how to get involved. So I think that Wayne is now going to close off and make a few final comments. Wayne?
Yeah, thanks, Liz, and thank you to everybody who's spoken today, all our speakers and panelists. My name is Wayne Hubbard. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the London Waste and Recycling Board, and I have to say, kind of in awe of the quality of the panelists that we've had today, and the things that we've heard have really kind of put into context some of the challenges around food loss and food waste. But you know what, I'm kind of left optimistic about some of the things I've heard, the opportunities to reduce food loss and food waste from some of the technologies we know, amazing technology, the opportunities to share surplus food, the opportunities to eat more healthily, and to increase the use of plant-based food. And I think all of that kind of ultimately leads me to think that there's real power that we have as citizens, and we can all take action either in our kind of personal lives at home, or as people who work in businesses and offices around the country and around the world. We can all make a contribution to saving the planet, and I think that's really empowering. There's clearly so much that's going on already, but obviously there's so much more that we need to do. It's a massive challenge, and I'd just like to kind of put up a slide, if I may, which will just leave you all with some calls to action. So I'm going to try and share my screen. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, here we go. Right. So hopefully you are seeing this PowerPoint slide. Basically, the 3 calls to action that I want to leave you with are sign up to be a friend of Champions 12.3. Anyone can do that. A sign-up form will be distributed after the event. Join the London Food Flagship Consortium. You can express interest, and again, if you're a London business, we would love to hear from you. And again, a form will be distributed after the event. And I also want to just give another shout out to Guardians of Grub. You know, there's an amazing offer there from WRAP for any London any UK food business or catering business to get that free training. So sign up for the Guardians of Grub. We'll send the details after the event. So I think really it's just for me to say thank you to everybody who's contributed today. I want to particularly express our thanks to our event partners, Winnow and the Embassy of Denmark, for all their hard work and support in making this event happen, and also to all of you for attending. Finally, thanks to the LWOB team, Ali, Isabella and Ade, who have helped put this event together. It's an incredible amount of work. I know just how much we put in as a team in March and how disappointing it was that the event had to be cancelled for very understandable reasons. But it's great that we finally come together on and done this event remotely, and it just goes to show the power of us all working together. We can still be in contact with each other, and there's lots that we can do. So thanks again, and I want to wish you all a great week. Thank you and goodbye.